I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Welcome to Friday. We're jumping right into our big story tonight because it's one a lot of you have been asking about. It's running all the time, so we got right on it. It's another political ad fact check. This one against incumbent Republican Lori Chavez-DeRemer of Oregon's 5th Congressional District. The ad accuses her of repeatedly voting against Social Security. It comes from the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee working to get Democrats elected. So let's start by watching the first part of the ad so that we're all on the same page here.
Social Security. It's America's contract with the middle class. You pay into it every paycheck. But will it be there when you retire? The congressional record shows Lori Chavez-DeRemer voted 26 times against Social Security and Medicare. 26 times.
Yeah, how about that? Well, that's a really explosive claim. For national politicians, you got to understand Social Security is the third rail of politics. You touch it, you die. So if she really did vote 26 times against that, it would be huge. But this is such a surprising allegation that even when I asked the DeRemer campaign about it, they said they had no idea what the Democrats are talking about here. And you know what? I believe them. It took some time, but I dug into it and I did find out where it's coming from. And in my opinion, Democrats are playing games with this one. Let me explain. Lori Chavez-DeRemer took office in early January of 2023 after being elected in November of 2022. At the end of her very first month in office on January 31st, the congressional record shows that DeRemer cast a vote with her fellow Republicans. The vote came at the end of debate over Resolution 75, sponsored by Republicans. It dealt with COVID and the public health emergencies, as well as requiring a study on federal agencies using work-from-home policies. Near the end of the debate, Democratic Representative Jim McGovern of Massachusetts rose to make the following statement. Madam Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to ensure that none of the bills in this rule take effect unless it is certified that they do not decrease Social Security benefits. Now, I know that sounds like a bunch of legal language, but what he's saying is a vote no on this thing that we're debating so that we can next vote yes on my statement about Social Security. That's what he's trying to get everybody to do, vote no. But Republicans hold a majority in the House, and the winning vote was yes, not no. Chavez-DeRemer, a Republican, voted yes with her Republican colleagues in the majority. And because of that, the proposal that the Representative McGovern, wanted to vote on instead, that one stating that Social Security benefits must be protected, well, that did not get a vote. They moved on to something else. And so that is what the folks who created the attack ads are using as one of the many times that DeRemer voted against Social Security and Medicare, even though the wording of that initial proposal had nothing to do with Social Security or Medicare. Jim Moore, a political science professor at Pacific University, says it's an age-old trick that goes back maybe 40 years.
Remember Newt Gingrich? This is what happens when you put a PhD in Congress. So he was there in Congress. He was the leader of the minority, but he wasn't the head of the minority. Republicans have been in the minority for 40 years. So as he's moving up in the leadership of the minority in the late 80s and especially into the early 90s, he started figuring out these kinds of techniques. When the Democrats are voting on something that they're going to vote on party lines, we can put things that we want in there, they'll vote no, and we can campaign on that. And so it's just grown over the times. This is 40 plus years that we've been seeing this kind of thing. The kind of thing that people may really remember the Republican House a decade ago voted dozens of times to repeal Obamacare. Did it ever have a chance of passing? No, because it would go to the Senate and they were going to vote against it. But they're piling things up saying, look, I voted to stop this horrible program 53 times or whatever it was. And so it's a technique Newt Gingrich developed, has been growing over time, and it's now used almost as a sport just to set up ads for the election year.
I don't know about you, but I find this stuff fascinating. You might find it infuriating because here we are in an election year, and that's exactly how these votes are being used. Similar votes followed during Chavez-DeRemer's entire first year in Congress in 2023. Here's another one. On May 23rd, the House was debating a Republican-backed resolution that dealt with fentanyl, the EPA, heavy truck engine rules, and student loan debt. During that debate on the resolution, Representative Teresa Leger Fernandez, a Democrat from New Mexico, rose to say this: Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to provide for consideration of a resolution that states that it is the House's responsibility to protect and preserve Social Security and Medicare for our future generations and reject any cuts to these essential programs. But once again, DeRemer voted with her Republican colleagues, and the previous question, the resolutions they were debating, well, those passed. And because of that, the amendment to the rule that Rep. Ledger Fernandez wanted to add that what she said about Social Security and Medicare, well, that did not get a vote. They just moved on to something else. And so again, the creators of the attack ad against DeRemer counted her yes vote for that original resolution, the thing that they were debating, as a no vote for Social Security and Medicare.
It was interesting as I started to dig into it, because when I just hear the ad, I'm thinking there's going to be a vote to reduce Social Security, and she's going to say yes or no, but it's nothing like that.
No, it's never an up or down vote, and that's the way Congress works now. So many things are buried in there because they're in these clumpy bills. There's so many things that are buried in there. So when you vote for something, you might actually be voting against something at the same time, just because of the way the amendments work and things like that. So unless you're a parliamentarian or you're sitting there watching exactly what's happening, all that subtlety is lost. The politicians know that, their campaigns know that, the big contributors know that. So they just use those nuances to make it into a sledgehammer.
Now I have lots of other examples. One from November of last year. It was ready to go as well, but you know what? I think you're getting the idea. It's the same strategy over and over again. Debate a bill, a Democrat rises and says, if we defeat this current bill, I've got a resolution to protect Social Security and Medicare. But the initial bill passes due to the Republican majority, and the creators of the attack ad counted that as yet another vote by DeRemer against Social Security and Medicare.
And it feels like with this one, it is the thinnest margin of technical accuracy. And for most of the people at home, it's not accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. It is on its face not accurate. On legal terms, it is accurate. So, look at it as you may. Anytime you say somebody is directly attacking Social Security, unless they're going out there and saying, here's a bill that is going to actually reduce the benefits of people who now have Social Security, they're not attacking Social Security. Even when people say they are going to reduce Social Security, they're saying for people who begin getting Social Security in 35 years. It's not now.
Right, because it's a third rail. Yeah, it's a third rail of politics, right?
Yeah, it's the third rail of politics. And why is it important? Because people over the age of 65 are the group that turns out at the highest rate. So Medicare, Social Security, those are the things that you hit on if you're trying to get that voting group to move.
A quick internet check reveals that DeRemer has said she supports Social Security and Medicare, by the way, telling the New York Times way back when she was running for office in October of 2022, absolutely not. She'd been asked if she would support cuts to Medicare and Social Security as a way to rein in federal spending. Cutting those programs is not where I, as a Republican, see myself. I want to make sure that we can fill those coffers. So let's come back full circle. The question is this. Did Lori Chavez-DeRemer vote 26 times against Social Security and Medicare? No, not directly. At best, this ad is highly misleading. And I suspect many of you now think it's just flat out false. As the professor said, both Democrats and Republicans do play this game and have for years, but it's the Democrats in the spotlight for this one. All right, moving on now. Voter pamphlets are arriving in the mailboxes. I got mine. It is thick. We're less than a month away from Election Day now. Some of you in Oregon have noticed that former President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance were not included. In fact, we got this viewer voicemail this morning.
I got my voter's pamphlet, and I am really disgusted. Not one word about Trump is in it. What's going on? Is Oregon so opinionated that they can't even put his name in the voter's booklet? Come on, Oregon, get your act together. Get it right.
Well, I understand why you're saying that, but actually, no, that's not the case. You can imagine plenty of people online chalk that up to big Oregon Democratic conspiracy, right? Well, no, it's actually the opposite. Ashley Grahams explains.
Well, this is the voter guide that we're talking about. Everyone in Oregon gets one, but this election, if you flip through, you'll see there's not a page for the Republican presidential candidate, Donald Trump. Several of you picked up on it, including Robert, writing in the Republican presidential candidate page in the Oregon voters pamphlet is not there. Everyone else's is, though. According to the Oregon Secretary of State's office, the Trump campaign chose not to submit a statement for the voters pamphlet. The Oregon Republican Party also confirming this and posting a message on their website yesterday, saying the decision to not submit a statement was made by the Trump campaign earlier this year. If you voted in the Oregon primary back in May, you might remember the same thing happening. The former president did not appear on that pamphlet either, but he did appear as a candidate on the primary ballot. And that's the same situation this November. The Secretary of State's office says former President Donald Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance will appear on Oregon ballots. Those ballots will be mailed out beginning Wednesday, October 16th. And if you're wondering about Washington, well, Trump and Vance do appear on that voter pamphlet. Ballots for Washington are mailed out on the 18th. Ashley Grams, KGW News.
Thanks for clearing that up, Ashley. Now let's talk about Oregon's Silicon Forest, otherwise known as the tech and semiconductor industry, anchored by Intel out in Hillsboro. Last night marked the one and the only public meeting required by state law involving Governor Kotek's proposal to bring 373 acres of land inside Hillsboro's urban growth boundary. Here's a look at what we're talking about on a map. It's outside the city itself, off Highway 26 and Jackson School Road. There's not much around there right now. Our crews were there last night getting video. Not many buildings and a whole lot of, well, dirt. The plan for the land would be to make it available to the semiconductor industry and attract one of the 3 planned national hubs for semiconductor research and development.
The creation of the National Semiconductor Technology Center, which will have at least 3 large locations around the country. Oregon's long-standing history in semiconductors and having a talented workforce should make our state an ideal location for at least one of those 3 sites.
Now, if you haven't been following along on the story and you're wondering how on earth did Governor Kotek get the power to change Oregon's coveted land use laws? Well, it's thanks to something called Senate Bill 4 that the governor signed into law on April 13th of 2023. It basically is a state version of the CHIPS Act, the federal effort putting billions of dollars towards bringing semiconductor manufacturing back to the U.S. instead of relying on other countries to make them for us. Under Senate Bill 4, Kotek was granted the ability to issue an executive order and move a plot of land that's outside an urban growth boundary now into the boundary. There are some restrictions. She will only be able to do that with up to 8 sites, 2 that are any size larger than 500 acres and 6 that are up to 500 acres. Any site that she chooses has to be within 3 miles of the existing urban growth boundary as well. And despite having that power for months now, this Hillsboro site is the only one so far that the governor has used to absorb land. And her power to do that, well, it only lasts till the end of this year. So any other sites on her mind, if any, will have to be chosen quickly. But going back to the meeting last night, opponents argue that Hillsboro has plenty of industrial land already within the urban growth boundary that should be used first. But Washington County Chair Catherine Harrington says, no, that's not really the case.
Expanding an urban growth boundary to allow for the growth that the current UGB lands cannot accommodate is hard. But the Washington County Board of Commissioners supports the work and decision of the governor to add these 373 acres to meet this historic opportunity.
And Hillsboro State Representative Nathan Sosa agrees that the land should be added to the urban growth boundary, saying the financial potential is just too large to ignore.
It means that we would be attracting billions in federal investment, billions in private investment, millions in tax revenue, and thousands of good family wage, living wage jobs for Oregonians. Those are the stakes.
But as we've said before, although the major politicians appear to want Kotek to move forward, that's not the case for everyone. A man who farms near the proposed site brought up a concern that we often hear from you when we're talking about semiconductor expansion.
Once they're paved over, that's it. But another concern is that the farm economies, we need to be next to each other. We need to be able to bring our combines across across a road and not be going through an Intel campus.
The governor has not made a final decision yet, so if you want to weigh in on whether or not she should expand Hillsboro's urban growth boundary in favor of semiconductors, you have until October 30th. We have a link on our website that you can use to comment It's at kgw.com. Coming up next on The Story, we're exploring the role of the new Portland City Council once we switch to a new form of government in less than 3 months now. It'll be very different from what we're used to, all in the hope that it decreases the dysfunction in the city government. We'll get into that when The Story returns. Let's go to the city of Portland now for another look at our upcoming new form of government. So far this week, we've showed you the new roles of the mayor and the city administrator. Tonight, we're going to talk about the expanded city council. Starting in January 1, they will not run any departments or bureaus, which is widely considered a big part of the current city's dysfunction. The hope is that this new council structure is going to get rid of the dysfunction to make it a thing of the past. Under Portland's new charter approved by voters, the new city council will be more hands-off than before and focused on helping people in their districts and setting city policy. They'll act sort of like a legislative body. Tate White is a strategic projects manager with the city of Portland who has studied the new role.
Council will be focused on being a legislative body, making high-level policy and laws, and then they'll have a lot more time to connect with the community. And they'll be representing districts across the city. So we'll have East Portland, for example, better represented than they've ever been on council. So they're going to be really busy.
Besides helping people in their home districts, they will pick a president who will run city council meetings and decide which topics or bills will be discussed and when they'll be brought up. Council meetings will be held on the first Wednesday of the month at 9:30 in the morning and the third Wednesday starting at 6 p.m. The council can change those days and times, of course. During council meetings, they will hear from members of the public, as they do now, from 5 people at each meeting. The public will get 3 minutes each, and they'll have to send a written request to the auditor stating their name and what they want to talk about before they get on the agenda. Each person can only speak at a council meeting once a month. The council can also set up committees to learn about topics and craft policy and laws that they think are important. By the way, the council meetings will be held at the current Portland City Hall. There are extra workspaces being built now for the 8 additional councilors who will join City Hall. It's unclear whether they will also get additional offices in their geographic districts. The city council itself will decide that once they're all elected. Those who are helping prepare the city for the new form of government expect the new city councilors will spend a big part of their time out in the city with the people they represent. Shoshana Oppenheim is leading the city's transition to this new form of government.
The role of the new council that's coming in and joining us in January is to represent their districts, and the constituents within their districts. So we expect them to be elevating community priorities through the committee structure and policy development work that they'll be leading, but also constituent services that they'll be managing on the day-to-day.
Won't that be fun? Coming up next on The Story, a huge matchup in Eugene tomorrow as number 2 Ohio State takes on our number 3 Oregon in college football. It's airing right here on KGW, by the way. After the break, we're going into the KGW vault for a look at the second ever game between the two teams. It was back in 1961. That's coming up next when The Story returns. You know, we don't often talk about sports on The Story, but tomorrow marks such a big matchup. In college football, we just could not ignore it. Number 2, Ohio State is visiting number 3, Oregon in Eugene. That game will be right here on KGW. Both teams undefeated. Their last matchup back in 2021 ended with the Ducks finally beating the Buckeyes. Before that, Oregon lost 9 straight, which started when the teams met for the very first time for the 1958 Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. So we went into the KGW vault to see if we had any old matchups, and it turns out, yeah, we did. We have the second matchup between the two teams from 1961.
High atop the Ohio State Stadium in Columbus, Ohio. We have here Bernie Carey, the director of the Channel 8 team. Vic Altoff, cameraman. Hal Childs is getting ready. And we're about to bring you a wonderful game from Columbus, Ohio.
Kicking off for the University of Oregon Webfoot's number 82, Buck Corey, sophomore left end from LeGrand. Corey kicks and the game is underway.
We certainly hope you're enjoying the great game. And Hal's got his hands in the pockets here. It's a little bit cool. What, about 45 degrees, something like that, Hal?
I would say so, Bob. Although the sun is shining, it is a little nippy.
It is
and
indeed.
A beautiful day for football, though, and certainly a tremendous crowd here at Columbus. 3rd down and 10 now for the Webfoots. 54 seconds to play in the first half. Post the quarterback. Post giving to Renfro. He fakes the reverse to Gechter. He is throwing for Burleson in the end zone. He has it for the touchdown. Renfro completing to Burleson in the end zone for the touchdown.
Woohoo! Yay, Ducks. Hey, you heard that right, by the way. Oregon was the Webfoots back then. They didn't change their name to the Ducks until 1978. But that game in 1961 ended with a loss. Oregon loses 22-12. All right, back to the present day. Tomorrow's game, 4:30, Autzen Stadium. You can watch it right here on KGW. Then join us immediately after the game for a special edition of KGW News, including team coverage on the game with Orlando Sanchez, and he's going to be live down on the field. How about that? Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. It goes on and on. I'll be taking some time off next week, maybe a week and a half. But don't worry, nothing wrong. Just have some vacation time to burn up. The team has some great content lined up for you. I hope you'll join them. In the meantime, Timbers 360 is coming your way next. Have a great weekend.